I see nothing wrong with this. I believe my delivery is totally natural. As much as my video last week may have looked more like a shoddily spliced together attempt to defeat an audio recognition system by getting someone to say specific words in a certain order,
Hi, my name is Werner Brandis. My voice is my passport. Verify me.
that wasn't actually the aesthetic that I was going for. And I've come to realize that the standards that I'm trying to hold myself to in these videos are making for some very unnatural and awkward segments. So I want to spend a little time talking about what I think that's rooted in and where it's coming from. So let's roll that blurred intro thing. Do 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 do. All right. So my week this week started out on Monday with some incredible feedback from some people that I really care about and whose opinions I value. And the general consensus was I went hog wild on the edits for my last video. No awkward pause or weird interjection was safe, and I just had to eradicate all of them. And it wasn't good. What I came out with, as I alluded to before, really wasn't something that I enjoyed watching or that felt particularly natural or fun to watch. As the editor here, I'm feeling a little bit put on blast, so I want to make sure that everyone is really clear on exactly what happened here. After the second video, we had a team meeting and we spent a bit of time talking about compensation. After a while, we all agreed that I would be paid on a per edit basis. Let me play this out for you in a couple of clips. In that case, the defender has the option to contest the foul. And at that point, rather than this going to some long drawn out process, in that case, the defender has the option to contest the foul. And at that point, rather than this going to some long drawn out process, so I think we all understand how this came to be, and I will definitely be making a video on incentives in the future. But for now, I'm going to turn over a new leaf. Let's get back to the main course. Prior to about a month ago, I had never edited a video. And it shows in my first video, it shows in my second video, and it shows in my third video. The progression that I followed is the progression that I think I have always followed when I've gotten new tools. So a little backstory / history on me. Back in the early 2000s, I worked in a dark room, and we went through that awkward transition from taking pictures on film, developing them with chemicals and printing them on paper, to doing all of that inside of computers. And at the time, it was incredibly magical. And Photoshop was at the core of that magic. And the first photos that I edited in Photoshop were awful because I had a new tool in my toolbox and I wanted to use every bell and whistle of that tool. I wanted to pull all the levers to 11, crank everything into the uncanny valley, and create photos whose colors didn't even resemble reality. And that was a quick fix for me because I looked at those photos, I got a bit of perspective, and then I just said, Photoshop, we're going to take 99.9% of your features, put them in a box, and I'm just going to use the very core, contrast, exposure, and, a little bit of levels tweaking on color. And that was it. And once I did that and I learned how to exercise restraint, I was kind of good to go. The other lesson that I took away from my photography days is that there is no substitute for good source material. So back in the film era of photography, the moment you pushed that shutter button was it. Like no exaggeration, 99% of the quality of a photograph was derived from the moment you hit the shutter button. If you nailed focus, if you made good decisions with your aperture and shutter speed, if you actually set your ISO dial or whatever it happened to be on that camera to the appropriate film speed, if you did all those things, you were off to the races. And if you didn't, there was very little you could do to salvage it in the darkroom after the fact. When you were printing a photo, you had dodging, burning, cropping, and contrast filters that usually came in kind of like a dusty/sticky box and were very rarely used. So the epiphany that I had starting out at the beginning of this week was I need to improve the source material upon which I am doing editing. The reason that my last video was bad is because I am not delivering my lines in a way that doesn't require editing. And so the question that I asked myself was, how do I fix that? And the answer that I came up with was scripts, actually. I kind of said, okay, I need to know what I'm going to say so that all I'm focused on is saying it right in a given moment. Now, we haven't talked about it directly on the channel, but I am pretty darn dyslexic. And so memorizing lines has never been my strong suit. And yet in that moment, I said, okay, the solution to the problem that I am facing is to memorize my lines. So what I learned is that what the problem wasn't the quality of my source material. My source material will continue to get better. You know, the film that I shoot sitting in my living room in front of this, half set thing, it was not the problem. The problem was that I didn't know what editing was. And to enlighten all of you, in case you're not familiar, editing is a very specialized form of torture in which you're forced to watch yourself make the same mistakes over and over again while listening to your own voice, which no one likes doing just in general, and watching your funny mannerisms and where you glance and what you're doing. I didn't know how bad editing was when I decided that I wanted to create videos. And now I've learned that lesson. But at the beginning of the week, I made the decision to film a scripted video, and that way I wouldn't have to do any editing. When in reality, what I've learned now is that my editing was derived from, created out of my self-consciousness over the fact that I need to get it just right. I think this is something that I've struggled with all my life, and I think it's something that most people struggle with, but we all want to control other people's perception of us. We want people to think highly of us. I want you as the people watching my videos to be like, that Alden guy can just sit down and wax philosophic and eloquently for 30 minutes without any preparation. He's just this incredible extemporaneous speaker. And that's not the reality. That's not me as a person. That's very, very few people in this world. And that is the standard that Editor Alden applied to looking at me, right? He was looking at the things that I had filmed and saying, well, if Alden, the person, was this perfectly robotic, eloquent, charismatic individual, he would never elongate a so in the middle of a sentence. He would never stumble over his words and things like that. And so as Editor Alden, it was my job to protect myself from the perception that I wasn't those things. And so I did that using excessive editing. And I learned the same lesson that I learned with film photography and digital photography, and that is that editing is a powerful tool, but ultimately it's an illusion if you believe that it is going to create perfection. This is something that I need to be reminded of, because as I mentioned in my first video, this is going to be a struggle and this is going to be a journey. And I was unprepared for the struggle of accepting myself and my mannerisms and my voice and my appearance and things like that at face value. And when I was given that tool and that opportunity to fix it, I jumped at the opportunity. And that's where the problem kind of leapt in. But back to the week that just happened, because more happened than just that. So I watched an amazing video by a Harvard psychiatrist called Dr. K. I'll link his channel. It's Healthy Gamer GG in the description box. And I watched this video, and the video was ultimately about the ways in which people cling to control of other people. And as I've already kind of alluded to earlier in this video, this was an aha moment for me, because I know that that's something that I've done throughout my life in an attempt to create a safe space for myself as a dyslexic who often struggled. I worked very hard to control people's perspective of me. And in response to Dr. K's awesome video, I decided to record my own video response to him the day after I recorded the first version of this video that will never see the light of day, the scripted version. And the video I recorded for Dr. K was a breath of fresh air from my perspective. I watched it, and with a few minor critiques, it was a genuine capturing of me talking about something that I'm familiar with, I'm passionate about, all of those good things. And it was such a stark contrast to the video that I had recorded the day before that was hours and hours of me struggling to remember the phrasing that I had written down on the piece of paper, and then eventually getting it right, but feeling like my delivery was kind of stilted and full of struggle and things like that. So once I recorded that video, I was excited about it and really, really not excited about the video that I had recorded just before. But I had to kind of take a break. And the next day, due to some very strange circumstances, I found myself sitting on a park bench 6 feet away from a mostly stranger, just talking about our lives. And it was just really pleasant. And it was almost 2 hours long. We were both waiting for another mutual friend. But we talked and we talked. And by the end of it, the thing that was in the back of my head, the kind of nagging feeling, was that person that I just was and the way that I just talked is the way that I want to talk on camera. Why can't I do that? And I realized in that moment that I had pushed the pendulum in exactly the wrong direction on Monday. I had rebelled against my strengths and said, the way that I fix this problem is a script. And I should have been doubling down on my own feeling of comfort in the person that I am and the value that I have and the way in which I speak, and just been comfortable with myself and the fact that this video or any other video that I record is not going to be a flawless reading of a perfectly crafted script. That epiphany changed everything for me. It's hard to express how meaningfully that affected me. Hopefully, I found a bit of my authentic tone. I used the word authentic way too many times in my first video. Please don't go back and count. I don't want to know, but it was more than a couple. And at the time, I used authentic to represent the good stuff, right? I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to be authentic, which means that I'm going to give people a clear view of me as a person and my values and things like that. And in my brain, I never connected the fact that authentic means flawed. Authentic means that you don't get everything right. It means that you make mistakes and don't say the right word all of the time at the right moment and things like that. So this is me doubling down on authenticity. It is me deciding that being wrong sometimes, stumbling over your words, having a flawed delivery is a part of the person that I am. And it's going to be a part of my content as well, because I am more excited about presenting my viewpoints and my ideas than I am about creating a perfectly curated, flawless video. And maybe I'll get so good that someday I'll have perfectly curated content and videos, but that's not the starting point. The starting point is me deciding that it is okay for my viewers, all 16 of you, I think. I don't think you all watch all of them, but that's okay. All of you, my viewers, to see my authentic self, all of its flaws, all of its warts, whatever it happens to be, and for that not to be a thing that I am embarrassed by or self-conscious of. And what's interesting is me sitting here now in front of the camera, that's easy to say. It was easy for me to say in the first video too. But what isn't easy is when Editor Alden sits down over at the computer that's like right over there and has to watch what I have said over and over and over again and pause and replay when I say but, or when I glance off into the distance and am thinking about something, trying to figure out what to say next. So that's the challenge. That's what I'm trying to do. And I wanted to share my experience this week because I think it is emblematic of what I needed. You know, it was this tiny bit of divine intervention where I got the experience that I needed to clarify the mistaken direction that I was pushing myself in. And that's really, really powerful and amazing. It's really exciting to me that in a COVID world where I have very little human interaction, that I was given a gift of just the right type of interaction to remind me why I was excited about doing this in the first place. And it wasn't because I wanted to be perfect. It was because I like talking. I like talking about stuff. I like talking about things. I like talking about myself. And that's what I'm going to keep on doing. So I hope you forgive me for this meta video, right? Video about my process of making videos. But it was important for me to create this, and I think this was the only way that I could reset myself and change my process for recording videos to match my style, my personality, and my strengths. And we'll see if it works. I look forward to your feedback as always. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. Your support means the world to me. Have a wonderful rest of your day. I hope you find yourself randomly sitting on a park bench with someone amazing as well. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Not a potamus. Ponderous.